it's a real challenge for these businesses. I think when they scale, they've got a purpose, they've got a why. Then how do you scale with that without losing it?
Welcome to Statements of Intent. In this 20-minute episode, we're addressing how e-commerce has lost sight of the people at its very heart. You, the customer. It's a chat that's optimistic, it's casual, it's probably slightly ranty in places, but that's okay. But it's a place where I talk to senior e-commerce marketers and share their statement of how they're looking to change the status quo of e-commerce, adding more care, being more considerate to those very people that they're selling to, the customer. I'm your host, David Mannheim, the founder of Made with Intent, and we're going to jump right into it. Have fun. Hello, everyone, and welcome to Statements of Intent. I'm here with Castore Chris. Chris, we're both in our Castore gear because we're merched up, although I think I have slightly more Castore gear on.
You're doing well. I mean, I've got the lanyard, but that's unfair to kind of expect that from you.
Well, when you send me a lanyard, I shall wear it. But until then, we actually go pretty way back because I knew you from your current body days where you're head of e-commerce there, and
Correct.
now you're e-commerce director at Castore. How is everything going? How is the world of Castore?
Yeah, it's pretty exciting right now, I guess. I think the latest bit is the round of investment that's going to hit the press. So from a business perspective, really strong. It's been I'm slightly fatigued, both with baby, as we were discussing before the recording, but also throw in the worst time to do that around Black Friday. But from a business perspective, it was really successful. It was the first time we were taking all our partners through that Black Friday period as well. You know, Final and Red Bull, and there's a few big kind of partners, but no, it's past expectations. So we're in a good spot.
And how big are Castore now? Like, how many brands do you manage and look after? Because I remember you talking to me about the concepts of Castore and me naively thinking it was just a single brand, a single entity, but it's so much more than that, from the manufacturing to retail to the production.
Yeah, no, that's it. We're up to I look after about 30 sites now on the portfolio. So 6 of those are Castore and localized versions of that. But yeah. So you've got everything like your F1 team, so McLaren and Red Bull. We've got our football clubs, Rangers, Newcastle, Milton Keynes Dons, Charlton. There you go into cricket with ECB, and down into rugby teams as well, Scarlets, Harlequins. So yeah, it's a fairly big roster now we've got that we look after in my team.
Absolutely mental. And your statement of intent here today is losing purpose as you scale. So I thought I'd nicely segue from tell us how big Castore actually is. It's about purpose. Obviously, I'm not talking about Castore losing purpose as you scale being directly related to Castore, but that's your statement of intent. Talk to us about that as a statement. Why do you care about that so much?
Yeah, I think I almost flip it into a positive, really. I think the 2 most recent examples, you mentioned me, current body, and you had obviously great insight in terms of what we did there, and what the guys still doing there, and also Castore. And hopefully that's 2 really strong examples of people who've managed to get over this hurdle, that have scaled without that. But I think it was curious when we were discussing this, right? Because I've been at some bigger businesses and I didn't particularly enjoy it. So I've always tried to lead goal for those kind of fast growth companies and enjoyed that a little bit of a journey. Now, current body I was with right from the early days when they were, relatively small, speaking in terms of, 7-figure revenues going through, but it was their first round of funding at the time. And I think obviously I wasn't there for the Castore period, so I don't want to speak with confidence about that. Both those 2 were in, markets were crowded already. They weren't. Castore saw a very good niche. They could go after this and they could do it better. More premium materials, more premium products. Current body was going into the beauty space, which was crowded, but they thought, look, we can do this better. We can sell a curated selection of products. We'll make sure that the products are shot beautifully, that the product descriptions be all right, that they have the best customer experience that's possible. No one else can deliver. That was really their why that they went out there at the start. That said, for investors, when they're looking to fast track things, That was their why, their purpose. And then it almost does it kind of slightly conflict with bringing someone like me in there who's typically tasked with growing that, right? So Castore went from 2 websites when it was there to 20 in like 4.5 years. And then we don't discuss Castore. Then Castore was up to 5 websites when I arrived, and it's up to 30 in just shy of 2 years. So it's that real challenge we see where brands try and grow. As they grow, suddenly what was, look at like Everybody Days, 12 people sat on an office space with far too many empty desks, and the owners could touch everything. And Andrew Showman, he loves to touch everything.
He did.
There we go. But him and Lawrence did. They were amazingly smart individuals, and their touch was obvious across everything from both design to descriptions and everything. And as soon as you get something like that, you think about the first task we had at Current Body, which was, right, let's bring in a German recruit, a Spanish recruit, and a French recruit, and launch these client sites. And then suddenly that extra layer comes in, that the owners become that little bit further away from it, that they're the core people of this purpose. They're the owner of that purpose, aren't they? And then suddenly they have to hope that this seeps through. But as the business and organizations gets bigger and bigger and bigger, and you look at Castore here, that's gone from I think 125 people to 500 people in the last 2 years. That's a massive shift in people. And I'm sure the owners don't want to speak on their behalf, but they used to know everyone's name, and now every week you'll get the talk and you recruit. So it's a real challenge for these businesses. I think when they scale, they've got a purpose, they've got a why. Then how do you scale with that without losing it? And I think you see some really interesting examples out there. And we probably all know those companies that have done that, and it looks diluted, doesn't it? Because what was their purpose?
It feels inauthentic at times. I was chatting to a chap called Ed Deason about this, who's the ex-head of customer experience, head of customer experience at Wiggle and Pret a Manger. And he was talking about this concept of, as you scale, you have more need for efficiencies. And those might be things like on the phone, not speaking to as many people, or being very short and succinct about your response that you type back to that individual, that person. Whereas previously it was all about, I guess, care and intimacy. And you almost lose that as you scale because of the need for efficiencies. Does that resonate with you? Would you say that efficiencies are almost the antithesis of scale, a necessary evil?
I think absolutely. And I think the bit for me is how that narrative can flow through when you hire someone from it, especially from the 2 organizations I've been at recently, where you grow into this international field. That's where it almost becomes tricky as well, because you've suddenly got to take what is a why that is very concrete and easily for everyone to assess and see whether it still matches that why. But then you throw into another market where you can't easily, imagery, you can evaluate relatively easily, but unless you're very multilingual, you're going to go into areas that just aren't easily digested, whether it is even relevant for that market. I think but I think it's a really valid point of, suddenly efficiency and cost saving does play that part, doesn't it? As soon as investment becomes involved, that adds that extra level of pressure, which means you might lose that love, care, and attention. But I put it back to the Panic and Buddy, so it's carving out that pot of money to make sure that you don't lose that, right? That they still have live chat agents on there who talk people through their buying process, that they still train them up to a certain level. But you can see with businesses of a similar ilk being passed on, whether that's the first to go in a P&L that's going to make it look a bit more attractive.
Yeah, especially within like a sales process or an investment process, it's required to be made profitable, and therefore the only way to be more profitable is to decrease your cost or increase your margin. Do you feel as though bigger businesses have more of a purpose than smaller businesses? Is that a far-reaching statement? Is that too leading your question?
It's curious, but I think a lot of small to survive and make that shift from small to large, it's got to be purpose, right? Because unless you're an Elon Musk and you're bringing a product out there that is completely game changing, the chances are you are entering a market that some would call saturated, whether it is or not. But with the 2 that we talked about that these guys have been relatively successful in, beauty and sport, if we'd had a conversation about 7 years ago, is there a room for another big sportswear brand on there? We'd probably go, it's probably not the most sensible one to go out there. And, there's some gambles there, but their purpose shone through and grew. I think that's probably, I flipped the question a little bit going, I don't think there's that small, larger purposes have necessarily a more of a purpose together, but for a small to grow into that large section, purpose is really the only thing you've got unless you're completely innovating in that space.
That's right. Like a Made with Intent, for example, that feels like a very natural segue.
Yeah, but it is a little bit like that, because I think that's the whole thing with Made with Intent is remembering your intent all the way through with this, right? I think this is what they're really curious about. And then what you kind of bring to the table with this is when we discuss about, how we look at these things. I'm probably the worst for it, because my role typically is increase awareness, increase revenue, reduce costs, improve efficiency. It's probably 4 KPIs I get talked about the most. So there is that temptation. But to look beyond those harder metrics and look at some of the softer KPIs that probably underlie that, I think is a crucial one. Like time spent on page, conversion rates individually at product level. Are you still reflecting those true values that made the brand what it is? I think, this is probably one of the key resolutions to that problem in my mind, is that you have to recruit a senior team that sits underneath the owners, that can remove them from the business and allow them to do what they need to do, that share that passion, share that understanding of it, and be able to pass that on to the team to execute, right? So I think that's kind of yours and my role in this when we take on Andrew Showman's latest challenge.
2 name drops in one podcast. He's going to hate us. I find that really fascinating. That as a concept. How do you feel as though, as purpose changes internally for the business, that impacts how they communicate to customers externally?
Yeah.
Another tough,
very interesting one. So, I think is that's the challenge of these businesses on this scale, right? That suddenly the purpose can get diluted and lost. And you suddenly the teams underneath, you look at current body again. It's a prime example. You get to a team where you have 20, 25 people, and you can't look at every single email that goes on. You can't look at every single product description that's done, or even understand it because of the skill set. You can look at things that are a little bit more scalable, like imagery and past comment. And it becomes a lot more. I think this is, again, goes back to that senior manager role, isn't it, within the organizations going, do you have those people who can take that purpose and that understanding and why, and can you translate it through? Because you're not going to be able to be across all everything. So you have to be able to, it's communication skills. It comes back to, can you pass on that purpose? Has the clear business clearly defined what it's about? Is the purpose clear? Because often that is the case. You go, well, they're doing with the best of what they can do, but they haven't really understood what the USPs of the products are. If they haven't understood the USPs of the product and the purpose of the brand, it's going to get diluted because they're going to default to something that they don't know. Process is great because you can go, okay, have you ticked a box? You've written the product description on this, but that's almost where that level of going, and tick boxing is a dangerous thing because it's actually qualitative rather than quantitative, isn't it? In terms of, you've got to understand that product description doesn't need to be executed, it needs to be executed with the intent and purpose of the people.
Whenever someone mentions the term intent in a like a casual sentence, there's nothing, I don't know, my ears always prick up because I'm now so used to it, It's funny.
I've got to drop your brand in there a few times, haven't I? You dropped Castore in there, so I need to return the favour.
I do. I'm repping the Castore brand, so it makes sense for you to reciprocate.
When I get them made from the intent cap, I'll put that on.
We actually have them already. In fact, you can buy them. We have a drop shipping test site where you can get caps, mugs, and iPhone cases. I think it is. It's very, very geeky. But we move away, right? Move away from the purpose of our discussion. I was just chatting with the CDO of Ribble Cycles, Matt Lawson, who I think you may know actually. And he was talking about their purpose over at Ribble being one of going for the brand, not the sale, is how he describes it. And this conflict almost between long-termism and short-termism, or immediacy and nurturing. Like, what is the purpose, and therefore how do you communicate that at Castore?
Yeah, I could certainly resonate with that. I think Castore right now is growing so well, but we've got to remember what we're about. We're about making athletes better. We're about the quality of our products. We're going to be proud of that. Castore is in an amazing position where there's so many opportunities that are coming in front of us, but it's about selecting the right ones and what is true to our values. And I think that's it going. Gag, probably the one I can speak most comfortably about is around the digital marketing side. Right? You get opportunities going, what are the channels we're going to grow on this? What's the best thing to do? Not necessarily what's the easy win. Like there is discount retailers who want to work with, or discount affiliates who want to work with, et cetera, et cetera. And it's talk about brand alignment at that point, isn't it? You're going a short term, to pull it back to his example, a short term win is there. Can I smash my weekend figures? Yes, I can. Will it get me a pat on back on the weekend? Yes. But is that going to undermine my ultimate goal, which is about representing the Castore brand in the way it needs to be and fulfilling that in the long term? Because people like yourself, there's a reason, hopefully, I don't know why, we didn't discuss that. Why did you buy into the Castore brand? What was it about for you that kind of attracted you into it?
Good question. Flipping the script. Honestly, one of my good friends, Ryan Jordan, he loves the brand so much. And he always looks so good in the stuff. And then when I started, I don't know if I should say this, but you do stores at like Cheshire Oaks, discounted stuff.
We do, yeah. We have an outlet store, yeah.
Yeah. So I went there once, tried on the stuff, and I was like, wow, this is actually excellent quality. Like this feels brilliant. I think it's like a waterproof material, but it's so warm inside.
It's the Garcia you got on, right? I think it's the Garcia. It's the Garcia you've got on, I think, isn't it?
No idea what it's called, buddy. You did a Reese combination. Recently, you've done a 007 collaboration as well. So I don't know. For me, it was less about the brand and more about the, maybe it wasn't, but the aspiration probably is there and the feel. I think it feels.
Yeah.
So
that's exactly what we want to get across. And I think it's that sticking. I love the brand Ribble. I think they're a great brand. And they've got a similar challenge. So there is, I can absolutely see that he'd have short-termism temptation with it, but he's got much more bigger aspirations. And again, I don't want to speak on behalf of Castore because the owners and the C-suite will have their strong views on this. But I think from my side, it's about I'm a custodian of this brand, and I don't want to dilute that in any way by going after that short-term win.
I wonder if that's a harder stake in the ground to hold as the business increases in size, or whether it's an easier stake in the ground to hold as the business increases in size. Have you found it, or is it a consistent set of values that you just believe in throughout, despite the scale of the business?
I generally believe, I think that the whole thing it is definitely harder, is it? Because you have owners and C-suites that believe this. They then trust me as a director to be consistent with that and pass that on to the team. But we're a melting pot of our past histories, right? I'm gonna hopefully not try and get us sued, but you drop in certain companies that people have come from who you get brilliant staff from, but will have certain mechanics they're used to. And you're bringing them there because of the people they are and the abilities they've got, not necessarily their past experiences. So you have to attune that to what you want them to believe in. And also, the harsh reality is that you're always going to have those hard metrics that you hold those people to as well, right? So, you're demanding one thing out of them, but at the same time, you also got to be that. You've got to have that brand hat on all the time. Literally, the brand hat you've taken off. Actually, that would have been a good time to put mine on.
Yeah, I love that. The concept of your purpose and your values and your mission relates to how people interact with each other and communicate internally, and therefore that impacts how they communicate to people externally, i.e. customers. And that surely is the winning combination. So it feels as though if you work backwards and you start with your mission and you ensure your mission is consistent and is of good grounding, and that in theory should flow through despite how big or small you are.
Yeah, especially to your point, the bigger you get, the harder it is. But it's a necessity because that purpose got you there in the first place. And therefore, despite the temptations, I think it's so key to kind of pull that through and make it consistent.
I love that, Chris. Chris, you're a very self-aware individual. You're clearly doing a really good job over at Castore. Thank you so much for spending just 20 minutes of your time with us talking about what you believe in. So I really appreciate it.
No worries. Thank you for being a customer.
There we have it. Thank you so much for listening. Please do like, subscribe, and share on whatever platform it is that you're listening to on today. This show comes from the team behind Made with Intent, the customer intent platform for retailers. If you are, of course, interested in being more profitable whilst being more personal, then please feel free to check us out at madewithintent.ai. Thanks again for listening and joining us on our mission to change how e-commerce sees, measures, and treats their customers. I've been your host, David Mannheim. Have a great day.